sometimes they get donations, 75. We give y'all half. Let's see.
Put that on the book.
Yes, sir.
That's what I love about you. So that should be up and going.
Gotcha.
I don't know how loud you're gonna talk.
Testing. No, that's good. Yeah, you gonna get all of it. Yep.
Okay, send them on.
All right. 1 second. Oh, you know what? I use my phone. No, I forgot. I got an iPhone, so I can tap in. I can tap into my I can tap into my hotspot.
I have some home training. I grew up in South Carolina.
Come on. Should be 2. Come on, where you at?
What they do? Because of all the
Other stuff.
all the things that clouded that, the school system.
So did you get back from the scenes?
You know what? I ain't hear nothing from his mom yet. I was gonna call her after I leave here to check up on her.
What? Yes, sir. Naive. Here comes Troy. He's late, but here he comes.
Anybody want to read the preamble? Y'all want me to do it? Any national want to read the preamble?
Yeah, Troy gonna read the preamble. Yes, sir. Oh, he said you got to move the car. Yo, he's got
I'll do it as we start. Hold on. Just let me load this up. Saviors of Islamic Spirit. No, sir. No. Never heard of him. That's the first time I ever heard of him. Saviors of Islamic Spirit. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can bring this to y'all, and then we are good. Okay. All right, peace, family. We're going to get started. We usually start off by reading our preamble, so you can stand silently or repeat after me if you're national as we recite the preamble and get ourselves warmed up. We pledged allegiance to other groups of foreigners for our whole life, so there's nothing wrong with us making a declaration to ourselves. So you can repeat after me or you can stand silent. Right. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right. We the people of the Aboriginal Republic of North America, asserting our natural Aboriginal rights as the oldest recorded Aboriginal Indigenous peoples of the Americas, consisting of an Aboriginal Union of Indigenous peoples living in accord with natural law, the law of our ancestors. Do hereby recognize all nationals of the Aboriginal Republic of North America as a unified community, establish our divine right to self-rule, common defense of our nation, a complete unified will for progress and prosperity by and for our people. Establishing justice by way of natural law and equality and complete autonomy as a nation. Thank you. You may be seated. Get the blood flowing, circulation. How's everybody feeling today? Great. For those of you who don't know me, I am Dr. Ali Muhammad. I'm the former chief and head of ARNA, currently the Minister of Education and the head of the Aboriginal law firm in ARNA. And we run these classes on Sunday to give community education on nationality, civics, law, economics, health, and some of the other areas that we cover. Last week, we started our discussion on mental and biological health in the community. And this week, we're going to talk about the protocols, procedures of nationality and economic building in our community. If you have questions, the questions can be saved towards the end of the lecture. If the question is something that is burning in you, you can raise your hand and we'll stop and subsequently we'll answer your questions. All right, so I'm streaming as well to people online. So just be considerate and put your phones on vibrate at this time. I know we still receive calls, but we want to be able to respect the audience and respect the people who are here. All right. So how many people have heard anything about the conversation of nationality? The concept, the conversation, the word, any of those things? Raise your hand if you have. Okay, great. How many people have never heard anything about it, don't know what that word means, and would like to learn something about it? Raise your hand if you haven't heard about the concept of nationality. All right, so everybody has some kind of concept about it, some conclusions that maybe they're drawn about it. The purpose of this class is to give you very detailed information, preliminary, but detailed enough so you can begin your research on it and understand what has happened to your people politically, socially, and therefore culturally. We in the Aboriginal Republic of North America advocate that our people have an indigenous nationality, a right that they can claim within their own jurisdictions and operate within that jurisdiction exclusive of all the other operations around us, not in the sense of not being able to contract, to commerce, and do things with people, but exclusive in the sense that most of us understand how Native American governments run. All right, the Navajo, the Sioux, the Seminole, the Cherokee, these groups have autonomous operations, which means those operations are independent for their own self-determination as indigenous peoples. so-called African Americans have the opportunity for a like circumstance. It's just been a severe ignorance in leadership and a severe ignorance in the populace to make those decisions and carry those things out. So thus we have these classes, and these classes are to educate you on those things. In carrying out such a feat, we have to look back at what has happened to us, the reality of what has happened to us, and see if those things are detriments to our life, detriments to our economics, detriments to our family structures, detriment to a lot of the things that are around us. And it is our position that they are detrimental. What we're calling slavery, or what is called colonization, the proper terms being two terms that you're going to have to look up, you're going to get familiar with today: denationalization and genocide. Those are the proper terms at law to describe what has happened to our people. What's happening to our children in public institutions, what's happening to the adult populations who are stuck in certain medical industries and subject to pharmaceuticals. All of these things are forms of genocide. And the reason why they're forms of genocide is because of the legal definition of genocide, which we'll get to in just a moment. So, since we don't have any announcements, we'll have some probably at the end. We're going to go right into our PowerPoint and get to our discussion. So if somebody online is having a problem seeing what we are showing, then you can just, ask a question, and we'll do our best to facilitate making sure that you can see it. All right, so get this guy right so everybody can see. Can everybody see that? Okay, it's visible. Great. All right. So nationality is the new resource. Why are we saying that, Brother Ali? We're saying that because most of the entities that we're interfacing with are extracting resources from us in an unlawful manner, even though we think it's lawful, and it's adverse to our community. Okay? I'm talking about a lot of different types of entities. Okay? So nationality can become a resource, and I think it is the new resource for the so-called African American. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if somebody has a phone, put that on vibrate for us, please. The reason why we're saying this is a resource, and I'm going to read some of these things that entail why. The formation of an autonomous entity offers protections from abuses that denationalized African Americans suffer, and thus propels the welfare mentality operation. The welfare mentality operation is, we need something, we can't produce it for ourselves, please, federal government, create a program for us in order to solve the problem. And the federal government says, okay, we'll create the program, but here are all these stipulations, all right? And these stipulations are set up by attorneys, and those attorneys don't have your best mindset. They don't have your family's future mindset in mind. It's not thought to be temporary. It's thought to be something that you're going to be on for long periods of time. It creates higher taxes. Thus you hear conservatives, Tea Party people, talking about entitlements are the problem. All right? So it creates a whole complex problem throughout the United States of America. And what we don't know is, if we were intelligent enough, we could not only solve our own problems, but we could solve the greater nation's problem. All right? Now, before I get further into this, the subject of nationality is not new. Since 1856, Edward Wilmot Blyden was talking about this discussion. If you don't know who Edward Wilmot, W-I-L-M-O-T, Blyden, B-L-R-Y-D-N was, do your research. We talked about him last week. All right, this is before the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. This is before Prophet Noble Drew Ali. This is before the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is before some of the more contemporary people that we know about. This is way back in the 1800s, before the Dred Scott case. I'm saying that to say that the discussion was paramount amongst the populations. It was so important that a whole war was fought over your political status. A whole war. It's called the Civil War. And the Civil War was about the so-called slaves, whether they would be free or not, and the dissenting South saying that they're our property, The North saying this act is illegal now, and we're going to abolish it in your states, even before they abolished it in their own. All right? A president got assassinated over this particular issue, and then amendments were made to the Constitution to allegedly address this. So no one can ever tell you that talking about the political status of African Americans is a wasteful conversation because a whole war was fought over this. Well, where thousands upon thousands of people died. So it's of importance, and it has a history. All right? All right, so having a new set of opportunities that we can operate without interruption will and is changing the economic demographic. Self-administered reparative actions. What do I mean by that? Meaning reparations. You hear about reparations all the time. Usually reparations is thought of as, oh, we were enslaved, please give us some money or give us something for that act. Our people, though, we get caught in this conversation by not knowing how to express ourselves in it. Because the first thing that can be brought up is that, oh, well, throughout history, everybody has been enslaved. All right? That's one argument that will be raised. However, when you look at any of those that they will bring up, it was not denationalization, which means the people did not lose their identity in those forms of slavery. Africa had slavery for thousands of years. But the people didn't lose their names, they didn't lose their God, they didn't lose their culture. They worked off of whatever it is that they were found guilty of through some type of indentured servant capacity, and then they went back to their community. All right? But the political theft, so much so that we're walking around with names like Jones and Bush, all right? And names of other people is a unique experience, all right? Where we completely lost our identity and have suffered because of that. So when we say self-administered reparative actions, we're talking about what we can do within our own confinements without outside interruptions. Okay, we're not talking about begging for anything. All right, so those are about us employing ourselves, creating new markets, and challenging old models of work, education, services, products, etc. All right, so indigenous nationality opens up prior unavailable laws for protection of person and property. A big issue. All right? A lot of our young brothers are going to jail just because they signed plea deals. And the attorneys or public defenders aren't helping them get a better idea whether they could beat the case, what the real merits are. They're just signing up. And they say, okay, well, you just walk this parole off for 3 years. It's your first offense. Then you're good. Then you find out you get pulled over by something happens, somebody is in your car and you get charged. Let's say your friend has some marijuana. You in the car, you didn't even know he had it. You get caught in that, the PO comes take you, then they take you upstate. Things like that. All right? So there are many different authors who publish works on the criminalization of our people, but it's happening. All right? Spending reductions. Property tax. We pay property taxes. We have methods for you to obfuscate not paying those and being exempt. Okay? All right? Sales tax. We pay sales tax. We go buy our children stuff for school, pay Staples, we pay Walmart, we pay. What if we could be non-tax liable for those things? All right? Tax debt from the private and public sector. The IRS is chasing many of us. Many of our stars get locked up. All right? Lauryn Hill, Wesley Snipes. All right, Damon Dash is being chased by the state of New York for $4 million worth of back taxes. This is because their attorneys, primarily who are foreigners, aren't giving them the best advice about how to go about their skills as being self-employed, because those people are self-employed. And they could, not have to deal with that at all. All right, so provides labor via our 12 ministerial councils, increases profits from indigenous non-taxable labor, new markets, etc. So, all right, so let's look at this. If we're talking about nationality being a new resource, then what is the other stuff? Denationalization, what is that? It is the political act of an agency and its agents, or political body, and its officers of forcefully removing another from their political status in violation of their natural or human rights. That's denationalization. That's what has happened to our people. All right? So when you go to school and you see all of our children under the names of Europeans, and we know they're not Europeans, and we don't see indigenous names, we don't have to look for the evidence. That's the evidence. All right, we can look through the books, we can look at, but you're still carrying the name of the people who enslaved you. The Bible says a good name is better than gold. So we must be got some rusty locks. All right, some cubic zirconia. All right. So what is nationality? And why is this important to young people? Because I like to start my conversations off explaining why this is important to the younger generations that's coming up. Younger generations, you are suffering from a catastrophe. The catastrophe is you've been sold out by multiple generations who wanted to integrate with something that they did not understand. And by integrating with it, they have created a very difficult thing for the greater group. And that is the lack of being able to understand how to stay economically viable and how to pass on wealth to children. And giving them the proper education to be able to go out here and do business, because business in America is warfare. It is a form of warfare. In 10 years, the jobs won't be what they used to be 10 years prior to that. You are being marginalized by technology, robots. All right? You used to be able to go get the secretary job. Now they got automated systems. They don't need you anymore. All right? They're exporting those things to foreign groups. All right? And no disrespect to any of the foreigners. You get on the phone call, you can barely understand people trying to get some business done. Because that has been exported to other groups of people. Now you have to look at globalization and look at what the driving force of globalization is. And why are the jobs being exported? Everything's being downsized and truncated. But there are other areas where you go out to private communities where they are surviving off of prisons that exist in their community. Everybody has a job at the prison. You have a job at the prison, but you work inside the prison with bars and stripes, giving almost free labor. So we have to look at the economic demographic of what's happening and then educate our children accordingly. The digital divide has become the digital canyon. If you don't know how to operate business online now, in another 10 years, you'll be a dinosaur. All right? And if you're looking for Social Security and entitlements to be your safeguard, you need to go back and listen to our Aboriginal radio shows that we did way back in 2012, where we showed you basically during Obama's administration with the Sequestration Act, he basically canceled entitlements for the future. All right, within 10 years, over $1 trillion will be cut. That was already put in motion 3 years ago, so actually we only got seven left. So all this argument about the budget, there's an underlying argument. And the underlying argument is certain entitlements will be almost completely gone. You're already seeing the signs of it through, if you're getting unemployment insurance and other things, the drops in those in the last 2 years where some people couldn't get unemployment payments, the reduction in the amounts, whole 401ks and retirements just disappearing. All right, because these are invested on the markets without your authority. So the veil is being pulled back on who really runs things and what government really is. And if your children aren't getting a civics class and an economics class, they're almost automatically set for failure. Unless they can get some people in the community to collect information like we're doing and help them out. But they need to know what nationality is in a major way and in a functional way, not just talking about it. So what is nationality? It is to belong to a nation or body politic, affording one the protections, guarantees, security, natural and political rights retained by the group. Check this out. If we are dealing with a 75% divorce rate, that's just on the books with marriage licenses, not counting the unreported stuff, then we're dealing with a great problem. The great problem is if you can't keep families together, you can't keep nations together. Not in a strong way. All right? So now we have to look at this demographic of nationality to see what's happening. Everything is happening right before us. We used to be of the understanding that we had natural rights, which you get from your creator. The right to eat, the right to breathe, the right to be able to labor and keep what you labor for. Those are natural rights. The duty of government is to protect those via political rights. To guarantee, secure, and protect your natural rights is the job of government, not to give you rights. As soon as you get into the mentality of a government giving you rights, you are already a slave because you don't understand civics. So the thought of, what's legal is on people's mind because they're waiting on an attorney or a judge or a legislator to tell them what's legal. When you should already know what's lawful and what's legal. Legal just deals with procedure. It doesn't even deal with the context of rights. It just deals with procedures. So you have your natural and political rights and your personal rights. All right, if you wanted to walk down the street with no shoestrings in your shoes, you have the right to do that. As long as you're not injuring anybody. All right? So those are the three types of rights. The third one is the one we're confused. Fourth one is the one we're confused about. And that's civil rights, which are not rights at all. All right? That's when you're given permission to do things that you actually already have the right to do. And the permission is to trap you economically into some type of economic operations. So here's our infamous problem right here, going all the way back to 1868. So if we're going to understand our indigenous nationality or nationality in the indigenous body politic, we have to understand this guy right here. The 14th Amendment was passed in 1868. I need you to pay very close attention. The Constitution for this country was ratified in 1791. All right? That is 77 years later, you're dealing with a citizenship issue. When you already had a citizenship. For 77 years, there was a citizenship and a nationality. Why are you dealing with it in 1868? Because now you want to include entities that were not originally included. All right? So when you read this, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state where they reside. Now, if you didn't go to law school or you didn't take one of our classes, there's no possible way you can understand what that sentence means. That sentence is loaded. It's loaded with vernacular that is unfamiliar to those who are not skilled in law, legalese, or legalese language. Let's start out with the word reside, which is a part of the word resident. What does the word resident mean? In language, you have prefixes, suffixes, and roots in words. 101 grammar. All right? Then you have etymology, which tells you the history and origin of that prefix, the suffix, and the root. So when you learn the etymology and you learn how to break the word down, then you learn the part of speech. What part of speech is it? All right? And there are 8 parts of speech. So now when we learn all of that, we're beginning to learn linguistics. What does the word resident mean? We use it all the time. Res, ident, as in identify. Identification. Identification means to acknowledge that something exists. What is res? Res means thing. So resident is to identify a thing. Now, we do know so we can come to the conclusion that a resident is a thing. But you consider yourself a person. So why is somebody using a word that represents a thing? Now, when you go back to the original Constitution, it doesn't use the word residence. This is the amendment. It uses the word inhabitant, which is a proper noun describing a natural person. Resident is a noun describing an artificial person. So now you have two types of persons. Artificial person, which you can look up in the legal dictionary, and a natural person. So which one are we? And why didn't they just say it directly? Because someone wants to hide what's happening to you. So now we just took one word that takes 5 minutes to explain. Then we can go to all the other words. Jurisdiction. Juris meaning law, diction meaning speech. To speak law. But if you're dumb, right, which means your tongue does not understand the vernacular, you can't speak law. What are you going to speak? Nothing. Because you're called the dumb, deaf, and the blind. So now you're muted. So now, of course I have jurisdiction because you don't know what to say. Because in order to know what to say, you have to speak it. You have to have the right dictions. So now we have another word, subject. What is a subject? And why do these persons have to be subjects when in 1791, those people weren't subjects? So the question that we just get straight to cut through the fake baloney and the swine, are African Americans natural born citizens or natural persons or free persons according to the Constitution? The answer is emphatically no. You are not a citizen. You believe you are a citizen. What you are is a subject citizen that is property. Federal property. That's the reality. Any legal scholar can have that conversation with you. When Mike Huckabee, who is a contender for the Republican candidate, said that the Dred Scott decision was not overturned, and then when they said, well, the 14th Amendment overturned them, he just smirked at him. Now, this is a lawyer. These are the quiet conversations that Europeans have that they don't have with the greater populace. Not even their own greater populace. For the aristocrats, they're having that conversation. All right, so our point is, our people have never been natural-born citizens. All right? And we've been shoved into these pockets of not understanding what is around us in the demographics of law, and it has impacted us adversely when it comes to economics. All right? So, we can look up these terms. Anybody ever do a fictitious business name registration with the Secretary of State or the municipality? That's what they call it, a fictitious name registration. So you can go through all the cities, all the counties, all the states, and they have these fictitious name registrations. Why don't they say business name registration? Why do they say fictitious name registration? Because it's a fiction. It's a fiction. Fiction of law. Something known to be false is assumed to be true. Okay, let's look at the sentence. This is a legal dictionary now. Something known to be false. Assumed to be true. Who knows it to be false and who's assuming? Who's assuming? Who's making the assumption? Those who don't know. Fictitious name, a counterfeit, feigned, or pretended name by a person. So if I ask your business to come step up, your business can't step up because it's an inorganic entity. You have to step up and say, I am the authorized representative for my business. You say, cool, you're going to do business. Okay. Prior to 1868, you couldn't do that. Because corporations could not be citizens, nor could they have rights. So not only did the 14th Amendment deal with the so-called ex-slaves, it dealt with businesses being able to come into courts and sue. Because prior to then, an inorganic entity could not sue an organic entity. Now you have a bunch of inorganic entities suing organic entities that don't know they're organic. Us. So that opens up a whole operation where people can hide behind fictitious entities and extract resources from you under the name or the guise that is legal. And you don't know what's legal or what's not legal. So a whole population has been fooled, fictitious, founded on a fiction, having the character of a fiction, pretended, counterfeit, all right? Feigned, imaginary, not real, false, not genuine. Wow, I need my power cord and I don't have it. I might need to borrow some of your power. I don't even know if I could use this one. Let me see if I can get some of your power. I think this one doesn't fit. If I run out of power, I'm just going to go straight from the slides. Okay, so we have 12 areas that we focus on in nationality, and those areas help us, assist us with helping the people. So let's do this. Let's go right down to a few of these slides that are going to help us understand what's going on around us. The government that you think is the government is not a government. It's a bunch of corporations, all right? And it's controlled by 21 multinational corporations. These are the 21 corporations that control everything around you. They have subsidiaries as well. To give you an idea, JP Morgan Securities LLC controls all your Access cards, your SNAP, and your WIC cards. It is not controlled by the federal government. The computer mainframes are controlled by JP Morgan. We know that because a few years ago when the cards went down in 10 states, they put times that the JP system failed and they had to go and fix something. They didn't say the Department of Public Welfare system went down. They said JP Morgan's system went down. You need to understand who's controlling. Now, why is JP Morgan and these other entities controlling the money? Because they control the industries. What industries are they controlling? Mortgage market, energy market, technology market, military industrial complex, prison, food, and the bonds that go to your municipality, county, borough, state, and federal government. When the United States gets its credit rating done by Standard & Poor's or Moody's, it's telling you whether the United States has bad or good credit. So ask yourself a question. If they don't have good credit, who do they have bad credit with? You know how when you get a credit report, if you have bad credit, it's because you owe somebody money. So who does the United States owe money so much so that an agency can come in and say you got bad credit? Just think about these things. What is the gross domestic product in the United States of America? It is selling debt. You didn't know that? Okay. Treasury bills, treasury notes, treasury bonds are sold on the open market by the Department of Treasury, the Bureau of Public Debt, all right? And it's sold first to these guys, primary dealers to the Federal Reserve. They hold more bonds than anybody else. And in holding those bonds, the reason why they're able to hold those bonds is because they're owed that money anyway. To make it simple to you, if you have a PICO bill, you sign up for PICO, and you have this corporation called PICO. PICO is under the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but it's contracted to JP Morgan. The bonds and the energy operations are owned by JP Morgan and its affiliate entities. So when you pay your bill, the money doesn't go to PICO. The money goes to JP Morgan. JP Morgan offers a bond and a black card account to PICO to pay its officers, to run its facilities, to do everything it needs to do. Up front. The money is given up front. So PICO acts as a trustee when it collects money. Is ran. That's not how it's supposed to run. The problem with that is you're giving governmental authority to private industry. So now you have this going on. Let's make it clear. What else do you have going on? Let's make it clear to you what's going on. You have this going on. Oh wow! Looks like I'm running out of time. All right, so I can't show that on the PowerPoint anymore. But what I was about to show you, which I don't have the power on the screen anymore, is the United States House of Representatives as a company on Dun & Bradstreet. Dun & Bradstreet keeps credit profiles on companies. So why is the House of Representatives considered a company? And the page I was going to show you is also showing that it's traded on open markets as a law firm called the Office of Law Revision Counsel. All right. I was also going to show you the Supreme Court case that says that that's going on, then that government has divested itself of its sovereignty. Divested itself of its sovereignty. That's Bank of the United States versus Planners Bank of Georgia. Yours is still cool. You know what? I can't use that cord because this is a different cord. It's all right. As long as you're still streaming, we got it. We good. So what do we have going on here? We have government and officers who have denationalized the people. The people don't know they're denationalized, and they're operating in so-called contract under that ignorance. That's all we have going on. So the biggest threat to the people is not standing up and talking about the Illuminati. It's not talking about the Pope being in the Illuminati. It's not talking about any of that. The greatest threat is to educate the people about the civic operations of government and to get them in a proper capacity for their political status in the United States, and specifically for us as indigenous peoples, and then to teach them how to contract. That's the biggest threat. And you don't need picket signs to do that. You don't need marches to do that. You don't need, a million anything. All you need is a pen, a pad, and a classroom. And then we can show you, I wish I could get this open back up. We can show you the, I thought I had my cord. Let me see if I got it. We can show you the operation of this and how successful it is, not how successful it will be, how successful it is. So let's go back to some basics and civics again. We're talking about nationality because you don't have one. So we formed a body politic. We're also telling you that you have an allegiance to the United States of America based on the Constitution as indigenous people. So what does that look like? If you go to any officer of government, they have two things that they operate under, all right? The first one is an oath of office. All right. The second one is a bond. And we know about neither. Why do they take an oath of office? Because they declare themselves to support and uphold the Constitution, right? And then they're forced to make a public record of that affirmation, from the president all the way down to the county clerk, right? But then you can go and try to enforce a constitutional right, and what you find out is you're getting all these problems with enforcing that right. So why are you getting problems? The officer, judge, whoever it is operating under their bond, not their oath of office. How do you know what they're operating under? They're operating under their bond, which is commercial, and the evidence is what law they're saying applies to what situations. They're not saying the Constitution applies to this. They're saying this code, this statute, this whatever it is applies to this particular scenario. It may be a judge, it may be an officer giving you a ticket, it may be whoever it is. So now we have a whole population that needs a new civic orientations and education. And we need a whole population that needs to be taught how to operate in contract. An example of this, if you want to be technical, and I hate that my PowerPoint is down because I can show you physically. Let's say you get a ticket, parking ticket, traffic ticket, and you go down to the court, and the judge says, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty? And you say, I'm not guilty. Now, it's important for you to understand language. Again, not guilty is a negation. All right? It means either you're guilty or you're not guilty. But that puts the burden of proof on you to prove that you are not guilty. So you got to bring evidence and prove that you're not guilty, because the accusation is taken as truthful because the officer does it through an affidavit. as an affiant witness, should I say. And if you look at the ticket, it says affiant. And then it'll be the officer. So the officer has the affidavit. You don't have one. Then he has the ticket. So you're supposed to say you're innocent of all charges. That's what you're supposed to say. And if you have something to check that says not guilty, strike through it and put innocent. All right? The next thing that you have to understand is courts operate off of laws. So does the judge, so does the prosecution. Everybody has an oath of office. Everybody has laws they operate off of. Then they have legal code. The law is different from the legal code. The legal code is written by attorneys, like I just showed you, the Office of Law Revision. The code is, for lack of a better term, trust. It's a trust. Private trust, but you don't know about it. The organic law is for the nationals and the real citizens. So when you go in, they can say, well, the judge might say, okay, how do you plead? You say innocent. I'll enter that as not guilty. Excuse me, Your Honor, I have a question. Oh, sure, you have a question? What's the question? Can you enter a plea for me? Are you legally able to enter a plea for me, sir or ma'am? Of course not. I can't do that. Okay, well, I want to declare that I'm innocent. So for the record, can a not guilty plea that you're saying that I'm making be removed from the record, please? Why do you need to do that? Because usually you have a stenographer. In some courts, you don't have a record, you have a recording, or you have no record. So then you need to learn how to bring in your own recording devices, which they charge for. But we got technology today that's good. They have pens that are camera and all they are US automated. So you have to sneak it in. Well, why do you have to sneak it in, brother, if it's legal? Because they're using police powers to obfuscate you from natural rights. Okay? So if you make the recording, you say, well, I recorded this, and then you use it as evidence later, you can cite the lawful grounds on why you carried out that action. The unrebuttable lawful grounds. So, point being, you're in there, and the judge, you will usually say this, where the ticket is $150, whatever, you have to put down collateral. Do you have $50 in collateral to put down today? So collateral is you paying for the ticket before you're found guilty or innocent. So now you're already being convicted and penalized. But you have to object. So all of your objections should be by question. That way you can avoid contempt of court. You get into a situation where you start making affirmative statements and getting argumentative, it's easy for the judge to say, I'm finding you in contempt of court. I'm finding you more, or I'm going to put you in jail for whatever. Your Honor, I have a question. If I'm innocent of the charges, is there a law that you are oath to, that we're all oath to, that says I have to put down a deposit or some type of amount before I'm found innocent or guilty? And if there is, prosecution or judge, can you please cite the law for me? And then I'll be more than willing to put this deposit down. There is no law. It's court procedure. See, these are questions. These are simple questions. And the question derives from the mentality of knowing what is a right and what is not. What is binding and what is not. So if somebody makes the allegation that you have to put $50 worth of collateral, they just have to cite the law that they're obligated to that says they have to do it. It doesn't exist. As a matter of fact, there's been one state that shot it down, one state Supreme Court, I think it's California and New York, that shot down the prerequisite for putting down collateral for tickets and all these other things. All right, so now you might get to a court, like they used to have it in traffic court. Here, I think they've changed it now, that you have the judge alone who's prosecuting. What is the judge doing prosecuting? That means that now he's violated his judicial canon and he's no longer a neutral party. All right? Judges are not allowed to prosecute. Prosecution is supposed to come from the district attorney's office or state's attorney's office. That's sanctioned by the Constitution. So you may have a situation where you have the ticket and there's no prosecution. So what do? You write a letter to the district attorney and ask them if they have that case number inside of their registry. If they don't have the case number inside of the registry, guess what? It's fraudulent prosecution. The judge can't prosecute. Philadelphia Parking Authority is not the district attorney. They can't prosecute you. That's a corporation. It's listed as a corporation in the statute. Philadelphia Traffic Court is a corporation. It cannot prosecute you. It has to have a prosecutor from the district attorney's office with evidence that the prosecution is in the registry. So you can write a letter to them. They'll send you, based on the Freedom of Information Act, with your name, all right? And you can ask them that information, and they'll send you a letter back saying, based on our records, we have no registry of that. So based on the consolidated statutes, where it cites that all prosecution must issue from the district attorney's office, that's what you call fictitious prosecution or fictitious plaintiff. And there's something in law called the fictitious plaintiff rule. To prosecute as a fictitious plaintiff is a contempt of court. So now you can take that letter with a simple affidavit and say, well, sir or ma'am, this law in the consolidated statute says that all prosecution must issue from the district attorney's office. Is this indictment or charge from the district attorney's office? And by the way, I have a letter from the district attorney saying that it's not. So now your evidence is mounted. They have no evidence. You have everything. All they have is a ticket saying that you parked illegally, where the Supreme Court, their Supreme Court, has already acknowledged that the municipality or corporation cannot obstruct the right that's guaranteed by the Constitution. And there's no such thing as parking. Parking is future perfect tense. Like I'm walking to the store. That means you're walking. If you're done walking, you walk to the store. W-A-L-K-E-D. If you're walking, you're walking. If I'm talking, I'm speaking in the present time. What is parking? Parking means you're still doing it. So they hold you in an action that's over, but through linguistics. You might say, well, brother, that's going too far. No, it's not going too far. It's exactly what it says it is. They didn't say the park authority. They didn't say park ticket. They said parking ticket. Linguistics. All right, so that scenario just shows you in the framework of a court of law everything that's going on. People who are obligated to certain bodies of law and they're operating off of other bodies of law. All right? Now, everybody's not going to be a lawyer. So what we've done in Honor is we formed our own law firms and a jurist certification program for people who are skilled in that, who can help you with those minor things. All right? So that we don't have to have everybody trying to, do everything at once. That's very difficult in a society. So when you come back to the issue of nationality, the issue of nationality is highlighting the things that are encumbering you. And it's showing you a path to go another route. Now, key point. Everybody in North America who's indigenous needs a new business paradigm. Because the businesses that you set up, you register them with entities that become predatory upon you. You open a bank account, you start a business, you're back in student loans, you're back in IRS debt, you're back in whatever, and these entities come and garnish all your money. All right? What if you could set up a bank account where they couldn't take the money out? We know how to do that. We could set you up an unincorporated association account, trust account, one with both merge, whatever, where you have multiple signers and it's unincorporated. That means it's not in their registry, but it can still do business. So you keep it in your indigenous name, you keep the business registered in your indigenous society, and all you do is go to the Department of Treasury to get an EIN, which is free. All right? But usually when you go get an EIN, you do it through LegalZoom or a lawyer, and they register your entity with the Department of Treasury or the IRS as a for-profit taxable entity. And therefore, after 3 years, you're in the IRS business master file system as a for-profit entity. So if you don't file those taxes, they come in and look for you. So what if you could register it without putting all your social security number and all that information as a tribal business that's exempt? That means they're never going to look for you because you don't exist in the business master file system as a taxable entity. So that's dealing with the process of how you acquire your EIN. We can now do that service for 60 million people, or at least the adult population, however many number of people that is. So now they can do all of their entrepreneurial, independent contracting or work without having the IRS chasing them. That's what you call saving money. Now you have your bank account that they can't lien. Now you have a place to put your assets and be comfortable. So if you still have those encumbrances, you can obfuscate them through other processes. You know, Chapter 7, no assets, debt discharge processes, Fair Debt Collection Practice Act stuff, all of the ways that we challenge these adverse debts. So essentially what we're saying is we can set you up a business model that's a fortress. Then we can bring you over and nationalize you. What are we saying with that, with the nationality? We're saying you are born a name that now has the rights to all of your property. We call that the trustor. You have an opportunity to come into a nation, an indigenous body politic, ARNA, who can act as the trustee. And you in your indigenous name are the beneficiary of all the property, but in your proper status. So now you have 3 vehicles that you can do business in. You can do business in your former birth name. You can do business through your business vehicles through ARNA with assistance from the society, and you can do business in your new indigenous name. That's government. In God we trust. But we don't know what a trust is. A trust has 3 parties: trustor, trustee, beneficiaries. Right now, you're not in that model. You're in this model. Your trustor has the rights to signing and possession, not ownership. The United States, the state governments, the entities that they have around you, all act in a trustee capacity, which means they could take your contracts and do all kind of funny things with them and say you're obligated. And then you are not the beneficiary of any of it. The beneficiary are all of the taxing entities and entities that can set you up to take your property and even your persons. That's the construct you're under now. So now you're in a trust relationship where you're the trustor, you got foreign or corporate trustees, and the beneficiaries are these multinational corporations that I'm highlighting, which creates poverty, which robs you of inheritable wealth. So that's the situation that's outside this door. What we're saying is we got to do something about it. So how do we start you off with doing something about it? You have to consider nationalizing and doing business with this construct that we're talking about. Now, this is not something we're making up. Other indigenous people are using this construct, and then you can go to their places where they have land that they purchased or have reserved or both. You can go to New Mexico and Arizona and see the Navajo, who have the greatest land acquisitions of all indigenous peoples here. You can see the children playing at their schools. They have their own buses for the schools. They have their own restaurants. They have their own, all this other stuff that they're operating because they have an autonomous vehicle to invest in. Now, some of them are getting federal money too, but they're using it to invest in independent infrastructure. And their businesses, they have their own business registration entity. They have their own attorney general. They have all that stuff. So the state of New Mexico is not getting any of their money. In fact, they're probably giving them some. What would your community look like if you had that business construct? It would look a lot better because you have more options. Right now, our options are limited because we're stressed out by the vehicles that have their tentacles on us, and it's disrupting our ability to maintain the core of our communities, which are our families, because of poverty. Or if we're maintaining them and they're not thriving. They just stress the hell out. So the people in them are sick, they're fighting each other, and they're considering divorce. Or they're together, but they're really not together because they both go and work for other people their whole lives and barely see each other until they get off at 5:30. And then one is watching Monday Night Football, and the other one is watching Empire. And the children are on Xbox 360. What a life. All right? That means we're living for other people and draining our souls and our purpose, which was given to us by a power that we have dissented to connect to. We have decided through ignorance to connect to these other fictitious powers. So anytime you connect to a power that's fictitious, you get fictitious results. You start believing in crucifixions. Still a fiction. Right? The Lord has died for our sins. And as Bilal taught us, we have the nerve to put Jesus in all capital letters. I'm not saying don't be a follower of the scripture. I'm saying you following scriptures that were translated by foreigners. White folks created religion. Their people didn't practice religion. How do you know? Check it out. So-and-so was the son of so-and-so, was the son of so-and-so, was the son of so-and-so, was the son of so-and-so. Why are you giving that? You know why you're giving that? Because that's bloodlines. Right. Nationality is based on just sanguineous, which is rights by blood. So you finding out who your mom and your daddy are. So-and-so is the son of so-and-so, is the son of so-and-so. Right? So, in order to be a part of that, you have to be a part of the bloodline, which means you're born into it. Nativity, natus, nationality. Or you marry into it. That's the only way you can get in. All right? So now religion was the ability to join other people's culture when you weren't there by bloodline and you weren't married into it. So now you join it. You join it. So now it's not a part of your tradition or your history. You join it. Oh, well now I'm a Christian. Now I'm going to become a Jew. Or Hebrew. Oh, I don't like Hebrew anymore. I don't like that. Now I'm become a Muslim. Oh, I want to be a part of that. Now I'm going to be African spiritual Yoruba. Oh, I don't like how they treated me. I'm going over to Kemetic science. Oh, I like Kemetic science because they don't deal with law. I'm going to go over to moral science. Oh, I don't like none of that. I'm going to be a Buddhist because Buddhist wasn't fighting nobody. And you just confused yourself. Now, underlying all those realities, the prophets of all of those systems practice the same systems, honoring their creator and practicing natural law. All right? And they all talked about some type of government that was not Caesar's. We all contracted up with Caesar. With Rome. Saying that somebody we had a crucifixion for our sins. All right? So that's confusion. That's King James rewriting the Bible. That's scholars reinterpreting things. That's Masons sitting down and telling you about God. You're supposed to learn about God from your mother. In 9 months incubation and the first 2 years of breastfeeding, that's where you learn the innate mechanics of God. And how you learn the innate mechanics of God is that you are being formed and fashioned in a womb where your mother should be studying a culture that tells her about what type of child you're going to be for the good of yourself and your family and your community. So now you're in class. And then when you come out, the first thing that is done is that you get put on the breast. So you learn nurturing, right? All right. You learn security. And that's what the Creator does for us. Nurturing and security. You got the sun shining, it grows plants, that's nurturing. You know it's going to be back tomorrow, that's security. Consistency. So we learn those things in our early age from our family. When we're broken from that cycle, C-sections, epidurals, abortions. You don't even get a chance to get here. Or you get here, vitamin K shot in the ankle, all right? No breastfeeding, Similac, genetically modified. We understand what's going on here. All right, you got natural law, then you got this other stuff that's going on. So nationality is about protecting those natural laws. You're expected to eat a certain way. You can't have a toxic diet and have a healthy mind. The two don't go together. All right? So how are you going to be a preacher and you're 400 pounds and you're sweating and you're up there talking about spirituality? Only spirits in you is wine and spirits. You say, I don't drink. Yes, you do. Because the food is fermenting and you turn into alcohol. So you're still drinking. All right? That macaroni and cheese is going to turn right into grade A alcohol right in your intestines. And you wonder why you're addicted to it because it's giving you a high. So, traditionally, we had certain ways that we would eat. We would eat certain things. Right? We would eat the best things. So see, in America, freedom is you do what you want to do. But here's the kick. I do what I want to do, as mankind says, in violation of the laws of my Creator. Ouch. So I'm still getting the ticket. But I can't read that ticket. That ticket is, I got heart problems. I got ailments. I got psychosomatic disorders, bipolarism, whatever. Those are the indications that you need to fix something, all right, and change behaviors back to the law that doesn't have to be written on pieces of paper. All right? It's the law of cause and effect that gives you the evidence of whether something is out of order. And that's what has been dumbed down in us. We're looking for somebody to give us a ticket for running the stop sign. All right? And we blowing by the cosmic stop sign. That's giving us all the indication that something is wrong. So now we have to learn natural law. So when we said the preamble, we said what? Natural law, the law of our ancestors. So we study in civics. Civics is secondary to natural law. So we expected to go through a rites of passage, to have a dietary system that keeps us healthy, and to have our own drill societies so that when we have problems internally, we don't have to seek these entities to solve the problems. A man and a woman having a problem that's indigenous, they don't have their own infrastructure, they end up calling a third party. The third party comes with guns and batons and somebody gets hurt. All right? Because we're depending on something to support us that's not here. So, nationality with us, there are documents, but the documents don't make your nationality. The documents are evidence internally that you've done certain procedures. So we can ensure the security of your business operations. By the time we get to paper, we're talking business. But before we get to that, we're dealing with your mental, cultural, and spiritual obligation to yourself and your community. Which says that we are setting up a system so that you don't have these practices that you've been operating under. All right? So anybody that's having the conversation of nationality with you needs to be talking about nutrition, need to be talking about rites of passage, needs to be talking about the business infrastructure, needs to be talking about independent courts, needs to be talking about all those things, and also needs to be talking about a proper orientation and education. So here's the steps that we tell you to take. Write down our website, governmentreparations with the S.org. Governmentreparations.org. That website gives you all the details about the society. There's a video that's the introductory video on that first page. It's about 17 minutes. You watch that video, and on that same page is a document that you can download into Microsoft Word or PDF file. It's a nationality exam. It's not graded per se, but it ensures that you've watched the video and access the Constitution so you know the laws that the society operates off of. Once you finish that exam, you can bring it to class and you can give it to our Minister for the Department of Internal Operations, Brother Jawad, or our local Chief Minister that's in the back, Troy Smokes. Raise your hand so everybody can see him. Those are the two parties you can give that exam to verify that you've completed that exam. At that point, you can ask questions because you're moving into filling out an intake form. The intake form is you giving us information so we can start documentary stuff. You're going to do a few documents. Once those documents are done, you're in the society. You have a moral obligation. You have business obligations to operate your business. You have a trust that's open and a business that's open for free with that package. And you come to class and you ask questions about how to operate, how to do this, how to run business, got this issue going on. And our job is to have nationals meetings to educate nationals and then, of course, the greater jurisdiction. So that's the simplicity of it. If our people want to solve our problems, they're not super, super, super complex. We just need a better education. We need to come to forums like this where we can study. We need the online forums, and this is being recorded. So, we can watch this afterwards. You can go right to blackandnobel.com and watch this, the whole video. And next week I'll make sure I bring my cord so we can stay online because I had a lot of slides to show you. As a matter of fact, I'll show some of those next week. So let's do this. Let's open the floor for questions about nationality, about business, about any aspect of something that you might have questions about. Joining ARNA, any aspects of it. How are we indigenous? What does that mean? What's the legal implications? Any questions that you may have right now? Any type of question. For those of you who came in and you heard me saying some stuff about religion, I am not anti-religious. All right? Actually, I'm very pro-religion. But I'm not pro-colonization. And that is the difference. Colonization is how foreigners have taken scriptures that were in indigenous languages, various ones, and corrupted it, and therefore corrupted the society, mainly who followed certain traditions. So it's not the problem with the traditions themselves, it is the problem with translations, it's the problem with people who consider themselves reverends, imams, ministers, etc., who adversely impact the community economically and who do very little with reinvesting in the community in the forms of education and the youth. And so those are adverse things that are going on right now. The black church accumulates upwards of $11.5 billion a year. If we saw half of that being invested back into our community, we'd see a difference. But we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is reverends who want planes, $64 million jets, boats, and all types of other things. Peace, brother. Go ahead.
Yeah, peace, brother. The question that I have is this here. You made mention about the EIN number. I have one myself for business. I have my own martial arts business, etc. The question that I have for myself and for others that may be on that same type page, is the EIN number, is it based off of our Social Security number, those that got the Social Security number, or is it an independent number?
It's an independent number.
Okay.
It's an independent number that creates an account where you have a business master file with the Department of Treasury and the IRS. And it has two things in it. It tells what type of business you are, and it tells it tells how the entity was registered. It tells whether it's for profit or not for profit. It tells whether it's taxable or not taxable. So whoever it is that did that for you, when I do it, I can see all that stuff in the back, in the back office, and then it prints out an EIN, you register it, and you can get the PDF or get it mailed to you. So it's not connected to the Social Security number. It is its own independent number that keeps an account for taxes or non-tax entities. Yes, ma'am.
Social Security number and birth certificate, is there any way we can just get rid of it?
With birth certificates, once you get it, it exists. It's never going to, you can't force them to go into their microfilm and get rid of it. You can negate your association with the instrument. And the reason why you have the power to negate it is because you can prove that it's a financial instrument. Right? The serial numbers and all the other things that is kept by the state as a trustee and registry is a serial number that goes back to financial entities. And it's actually searchable. You can search it on, if you have the proper SEC websites or, not SEC websites, proper softwares. You can search it and find out that the first three numbers on the birth certificate are the bond for that year for the state. All right. The second two numbers tell what state you were born in, this is Social Security number, and the last four numbers are check digits. But the same goes for the birth certificate number. So what can you do about it? You can disassociate yourself from it through an affidavit to the vital statistics. All right. Social Security is not a problem unless you are paying into Social Security. If you're not paying into the Social Security, it's not a problem, because if you paid into it at the time of maturity, you can get your money, if it still exists at that time. And it's just an account number. It doesn't exist unless you're employed and you're paying into the account. So those are things that are given to us at birth, and they can sometimes become tracking mechanisms. Or they can become things that you're forced to produce in order to do business. All right. But how we do business, you never have that issue that comes up.
Okay, so my son's age was 8 now. So I just start off eliminating both of us.
Yeah, and you can use other documents in Steve. You can use affidavits of birth. You can use baptismal records. You can use other.
He's never had no kind of baptism, or he's never had no kind of shots or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, but those documents that I mentioned, when I say baptismal record, it's not even a matter of getting baptized. It's just a record that is accepted by agencies if you have to interface with them besides a birth certificate.
So that's what I'm saying. So with him going to school, and I want to eliminate all of that.
Right.
I want to eliminate.
He has to be nationalized in order to eliminate that. And then you can provide the alternative documents for him to go into public school. And then, there's other things with public school, whether, the vaccinations and things like that.
No.
But you could deal with the exemptions for those.
Right. He doesn't have nothing. He's exempt from that. But I don't believe in that.
And I'm not going to take it that some people agree with those things in here, because some people don't, do, and they don't know why we may be mentioning vaccination exemptions. But vaccinations are very dangerous to our people. If you look at the contents of what is in the vaccinations, they're putting in human carcinoma. They're putting in kidney cell lines from cloned monkeys from various places that they're cloning them. They put in a whole bunch of things, and the concept is they're going to raise the antibody count in the body to increase your immunity. But immunity is not based on antibodies. Immunity is based on the body having enough oxygen and carbon to neutralize the things that are toxic to it, which are usually metals, nitrogenous waste, sulfates, those types of things. So you have to have something inside of you that can neutralize those things, and it has nothing to do with white blood cells, nor does it have anything to do with keeping antibody count of a toxin.
He was 7 months. I had him at 7 months. He had no white blood cells. So they was really, they didn't even want to let him out the hospital.
Right. Well, you find that people of our descent have a much lower white blood cell count than the other races. And the reason why we have that is because white blood cells are not the basis of our immunity. That's a whole other discussion, but it's a very technical discussion, right? But we could have it in our health class if necessary. Or I can answer a question about it. Sure.
Good question for you. And I don't know if a person has to nationalize for this or not. I have a friend that her daughter is physically disabled, or mentally disabled, one or the other. But she's well enough where she doesn't have to have express consent from her mother for most things, but her mother, she's relying on her mother. They're taking the grandson to the doctor.
Her, the mentally challenged?
The mentally challenged mother. With the mother, though, now the mother expressly told the doctor, do not give my grandchild a flu shot. No, do not do it, don't offer it, anything. So the daughter had to take the child to the doctor again, and they manipulated her into getting the child to get the flu shot. So she was angry about it, but she didn't know legally what to do and if she had any legal rights, because the mother is the biological parent and she has the rights. But of course, everything's really relying on the grandmother because a child is
Right.
mentally
Yeah.
/ physically disabled.
In that scenario, the grandmother would have to have a documented power of attorney to make decisions for her daughter, and that if that exists, or if they produce that in the future, then if something like that came up, then she would have a case. She would have a case because she could come and say, "Well, that my daughter is mentally challenged. I'm her fiduciary. I already made the decision for the child not to have flu shots, and you took advantage of someone who is not mentally capable of making that decision or not." So that's the path that they would have to take to see if there's a document that says, "Oh, I got power of attorney over her decision," in order to come back and get, remedy for the injury. Now, if there's not any documented thing, if there's evidence on paper that the daughter is mentally challenged, then that can be used as well. So she can use whatever documentation from whatever physicians that said that this is the case, and then go back to that institution and say, you took advantage of someone who has been diagnosed with this issue when I had already made a decision on this matter. So now I'm going to sue you for tort injuries upon the child and negligence. All right, so those are the two areas that would be highlighted if you're gonna file a lawsuit. Please. MRI. Okay. The question on the floor is, if you're taking an MRI and the doctor is saying you have epilepsy. Epilepsy is styled as a neurological disorder, and then there's different types of epilepsy, but neuromuscular too. So If it was something that was inherited, then we're dealing with a right, right, right. So yeah, you have two types. Something that cannot be traced beyond your own immediate generation, which they'll label as non-genetically inherited, or something that can be traced genetically. Either way, you're dealing with the same issues. The issue is that the nerves in the body are malnourished generationally. And nerves are made of certain minerals, so either you're not absorbing or getting those minerals into your nutritional regimen. And secondly, the muscles, which are made of certain substances and require certain minerals for electrical communication from the nerves, may have the sheaths, the nerve sheaths that are dulled or removed. All right, so you're dealing with an issue of increasing the level of copper in the body, increasing certain foods like onions that will help develop that myelin sheath on the outside of the nerves, sea moss, aloe, those types of things, getting that into your nutritional regimen. You're also dealing with cleaning the small intestines and the large intestines so you can absorb the things that you're taking into your body so it can be distributed to the liver and thus to the areas where repair is needed. So you can have a lot of different scenarios where if you've been fed like we've been fed, you're not absorbing a lot of the things that you need to get in, so you start taking supplements, but you haven't cleaned the colon enough and the small intestines enough to absorb what you're taking in. So now you're dealing with absorption issues. But if I were dealing with a patient, and I have dealt with patients, even children, who were born who had those types of scenarios, one of whom they said was going to die in 6 months, we used, the mother wasn't producing breast milk enough, so we gave the child the sea moss formula with an enhanced form of copper in the regimen, and the child is still living today. The child is about 4 or 5 years old now. And I've had adults with the same thing. So the reason that alcohol creates the stimulus for a problem is because the alcohol is high in nitrogen. And nitrogen is an electrical disruptor. So the more you reduce nitrogen, the more you're going to heal that scenario and conditions. You're going to produce less lactic acid. You're going to increase the absorption of calcium, and you're going to improve the power to regenerate the actual nerves themselves. So nitrogen, what foods have high nitrogen in it? Flesh. All flesh. Chicken, fish, you name it. What happens? It goes into your digestive tract, it goes into the stomach, the duodenum, the small intestines, and the colon, and it rots. It ferments. And in fermenting, it creates colonies of parasites that block your absorption. All right? And it neutralizes the electrical capacity of carbon and copper interface. Carbon and copper is how you get electricity, and that's how you get it in your body. So excess nitrogen from eggs, animal milks, and flesh can enhance that problem. All right? Alcohols, how you get alcohol is you ferment something. All right? So you're increasing the nitrogen, right? And you're increasing the acidity in the environment. So you want to reduce your nitrogenous foods to continue to heal, and that problem will not even be an issue as you get older and you continue to do that. For your digestive tract, some herbs that can help: black walnut.